everyone. So let's talk about the next assignment and model an example of that. So the next assignment is building off of what we've already learned about with sketches, profiles, and extrusions and revolves, but we're going to take that in a completely different direction and make something instead of something that is much more of solidly round or extruded that makes more sense. It's on all the same in all directions, or it could be radially split, general symmetry. We're going to use something that will help me model something that is much more, much less immediately understood. So I'm going to be modeling this little maple syrup bottle with the help of the Loft tool. So let's get over to the assignment and talk about that. So for your next assignment, you're going to be modeling a vessel using the Loft tool that will also have a cap and will be attached with a joint. So this will be due next week, or rather, we will be discussing this next week, but we will be moving on next week as well. So it won't be due until Wednesday, October 27th. So you have 2 weeks, but move from there. So the assignment is to, as best you can, model a object like your syrup bottle here, something like that, that is just not as straightforward. So using the Loft tools. It must include at least 2 components, which would be the main body and the cap. That cap must be attached with a joint within Fusion. Both the inside of the cap and the lip of the bottle must use the threading tool. It also must have a handle attached. Now, if your bottle, unlike the syrup bottle, doesn't have like a little doodad or something like that, just create one. That's perfectly fine. But this is just showing a different way of using the same Loft tools or the pipe or sweep tools. And again, you can assign appearances to both the components. So bottle, glass bottle, plastic cap, you could make them gold plated, doesn't matter. That's totally up to you, but they should have appearances as well. Examples of something like this would be useful, like a syrup bottle, water bottle, growler. Yeah, anything with like a handle. However, those 2 examples, water bottle and growler, are both pretty much round objects. So while a loft isn't the only way to create those, you could create them otherwise, or with other tools as well. Like I said, I'll be going over this in class. Standard thing. It's got to be standard thing. It's got to be in your in our Fusion folder to turn it in and model this as best you can. This will be using the Loft tool, multiple offset construction planes, be using the shell tool to create a hollow body, pipe, rail sweep, or a round Loft tool to create the handle. And that doesn't mean it has to use all of those. It just means those are multiple options to create your handle. Your multiple components, bottle cap and bottle, those 2 should be joined with a joint tool. You'll be creating threads on the inside surface, and the appearance tool to create or to model appearances on there. Now, it does also have, you can play with features. I don't expect you like this one. It has these little square recesses and such. If you can model those, awesome. But we haven't quite gotten into that, and this project already deals with enough new tools to deal with. So work with that. All right, go over this. This is already on Blackboard. Let's start modeling. Okay, here we are in Fusion. I'm going to move my my camera over to my syrup bottle so you can get a closer view of what I'm doing with that too. So I move down over here. Attempt to. There we are. Okay, now you can see what I'm going to be doing with this. Now, your sketches and such will be based off of the various little features of the bottle itself. So you'll have like starting at the base, a little bit more, there you go. Starting at the base, you'll have like this shoulder, it comes up, there's kind of an implied plane change here, this goes round, this whole body kind of goes round, then it comes to this actual circular body, has this little lip here that tapers up inside, and then there's the cap and there's threads inside there. And again, this isn't round all the way. This is more of rectangularly round, if that's a thing. So you'll definitely need a ruler and a caliper if it helps as well. All right. So the first thing you'll need is to create some construction plans. Now, what's the actual first thing? Save your project. Okay. Example, Loft syrup bottle. Okie doke. All right. So we're going to be using construction planes. And the reason we're using construction planes is we're going to draw sketches on each of these construction planes. So starting from the bottom, which you can use the bottom, of course, start there. And remember, each of these little increments changes is where something's going to be. So using a ruler, and double check that your ruler actually stops at the bottom. So first thing is this little lip. That's at about 5 millimeters. So I'm going to slide my construction plane up, and I'll put it in at 5. Okay. Now you've seen your hierarchy tree. It is starting to add planes. It also hides the origin. I'm going to unhide that just so I can see what I'm doing. Now you can build this sequentially, meaning that my next construction plane can either be based off of the one I just drew or from the very bottom. I'm going to work from the very bottom just because it makes more sense to me. All right, so my next change is roughly there, or is about there, and that's at about, let's say 30. Because this, I'm working in millimeters and my ruler is centimeters, so 3 centimeters is 30 millimeters. All right, let's keep going. Construction plane, start from the bottom. Next spot is about up here at 90. Type in 90, there we go. Let me resize what I'm working with here. Next one up is about the lip, and that's at about 140, more like 138, something like that. Construction plane, starting from the bottom, 138. Zoom out, this is gonna keep getting bigger and taller. And then there is another at 140. Then looks like the lip up here starts at about 175. And final top, the whole thing is at about 190. Okie doke. Now, like I said, I'm building this sequentially and setting up all of my construction planes first. If you want, you can work sketch by sketch by sketch. That's perfectly fine. This is just the way I prefer to work. Okay. So now I'm going to start building sketches on here. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be basically taking a slice profile of each of these planes as best I can. So the first one, pretty easy. I'm going to be drawing this more rounded shape. So this would probably be best described with a rectangle, and then I can use fillets to curve this out. So how big is this? This is roughly 40 millimeters by 80. Easy enough. All right. Now, do your best to keep your construction planes from getting completely confused. So as I built them up sequentially, they're numbered sequentially, but remember, you can change the labels all you like. So the first one, start a sketch. And now I'm going to make one sketch on the bottom plane here. I'm going to start, like I said, with a center rectangle. And what was it? 80 by 40, something like that. 80 by 40, great. Now I'm going to use the fillet tool. I'm going to round that out. Let's say it's probably closer to 20, maybe 15. Ideally, if you actually had a fillet gauge, that would make all kinds of sense. Cool. All right. Now I'm just going to keep repeating that. 15, 15, 15. Awesome. Okay. That's about it. Finish sketch. Next up is starting a new sketch, unhide the next construction plane, and now I'm going to work on this one. If it makes more sense to you, go ahead and hide your sketches as you go along, because it does get real confusing, or keep them where they are. All right, now the reason I drew this next one just a slight bit higher, because it's just got this little bump out. All right, now remember, if they are very similar parts, you can also copy and paste from the previous size, but this one, it is slightly different. So starting here, I'm starting on this plane. I'm gonna make this slightly larger. The first one was 40, so let's say 42, oops, wrong size. Let's say 82, tab over, 42, great. Add fillets, 10, probably still closer to 15. Oops, not 5, 15. Oh, good Lord. 15, come on. Silly fingers. All right, keep working around, adding my fillets all the way around. They're all the same, 15, 15, 15, great. Okay, so now you see I'm starting to create 2 separate profiles. Let's keep going. Add the next one. Now I'm working up here. It makes it a little bit more difficult, at least when you're trying to measure across the top or across an in progress bottle, something like this. So let's see here. This is where the calipers really come in handy. It's a little bit easier to actually get measurements. Right to there. That is 90. So I'm going to do the same. Sketch, construction plane, center rectangle. So it is 90 wide by it says about 38. So it actually got a little more narrow. Enter. Fillets all around for everybody. Now it is definitely starting to get less round, so 10 seems reasonable. Okay, finish sketch. Next step up is I'm working up here. Now this goes out to roughly, that's about 100. So unhide the next plane. And that's somewhere up top. There we are. Sketch on this plane, center rectangle. So it is about 100 by, let's try to measure more from the center there. That's about 45. Okay. And then the old fillets again. It is definitely a little more round, so let's maybe make that back to 15. Sure. All those 15. Okay. Finish sketch. Yes, this does get a little tedious, but there we are. All right, so next up, now I'm measuring just this collar where it does go to actually round. So that is a 38 millimeter circle. So on this next construction plane, I'm going to use a circle tool, 38 millimeters. There we are. Next one up is at 28. Oops. Forgot to finish the sketch. New sketch, select the next plane up. Center, 28. There we are. And last one is up here. And that is going to be, let's double check, actually unscrew and not spill the bottle. Let's check what that actually is. 26, so just slightly smaller. Oops, once again, I forgot to finish the sketch. Get ahead of myself. There we are. Last plane there, 26. Great. Finish sketch. Okay. So now I have all of these profiles. So now I can use the Loft tool. So drop down create. And when I select or mouse over the Loft, what it's explaining is it creates a transitional shape between two or more sketch profiles. Think of this as it'll kind of draw a fit point spline. So if I look at my profiles in profile, imagine that the end of each of these profiles is a point. It would draw a fit point spline between all of these. And just to give you reference, let me do exactly that. Using in the front plane, fit point spline, and using the end of each of these sketches, it would draw a fit point spline around those. The trick to this is as you know, a fit point spline, if you have a couple of points close together, it's fine. But as you add more, your drawing gets more and more complex. So sort of kind of what happens here, only instead, let me hide the sketch, or let me finish the sketch. A Loft will create an entire body built around these. So as such, and as a fit point spline is, the sequence that you select your profiles is important. Now, if you start at the top and work your way down, or start at the bottom and work your way up, both are fine, but you can't just go willy-nilly, nor can you use a selection box. You have to select them in sequence. So starting at the bottom, profile 1, and you'll see a label pop up rather. Oop, not that point. I want that whole profile. This is where sometimes the selection gets a little tricky. There we go. Next one. Next one. So on and so forth. And there we go. The Loft has created I won't say in the round, but a full body fit point spline. Now, is this completely accurate? No, I still need to figure out how to add in like this little bell housing and things like that, but that's pretty good. So I'm going to say new body. I'll switch that to new component. So that'll just throw it out. Click OK. All right. And we'll say Loft syrup bottle, if I could spell. Great. Okay, so that's how you would create the bottle. Now, there's a couple things we still need to tweak on this. I'm going to explain those in a moment. But the next tool I want to explain is the shell tool. Now, shell tool, what it does is it's very similar to like the offset tool, in that an offset from a line creates a duplicate that is slightly different in however it's generated, depending on the thickness, or sorry, the distance from that line. Same thing here, only it does in a three-dimensional body sense. So like it says, removes material from the interior part, creating a hollow cavity with walls and specified thickness. So I'm going to select the shell tool, and it is important which face you choose. You can't just select the whole thing. You want to actually select from the top here, because if I selected it elsewhere, it's going to try to draw a thickness, or rather the shell has to have an opening somewhere. So if I select from the top, and let's say, I will warn you that using the slider gets complicated, because it will bog down your computer as it tries to calculate the full interior. So I would just start with like 1 or 2 and let it generate. And let's see what just happened there. May have just gone nanners on me. Interesting. Stream that to 1 maybe? Not sure what's going on there. Oh, it had automatically selected the bottom. Deselect that. I just want that top. There we go. That's what happened. So now when I zoom in, you can see at the lip of that bottle, there is a hollow going all the way in. Super cool. So if you have a more complex bottle, this can really bog down your computer as it tries to generate. So that's why I'd say don't use the slider, use the numeric input. Hit OK. And just to give you a more clear idea of what's happening here, I'm going to use the section analysis tool under inspect, down section analysis, and I'm just going to use the X to Z plane here to show you. Select there, and it's giving me a cutaway view and showing you the thickness of the bottle. So that's pretty cool. So this is a really convenient way to make, the Loft Tool is a really convenient way to make more complex shapes based off of cross-section profiles. And just to reference, this section analysis view is a cross-section profile. Just instead, I'm looking at, right now, I'm looking at it from the top of the bottle sliced in half height-wise, rather than taking slices as I go up and down. Okay. So let me collapse my sketches and construction planes, and I will hide the section analysis. And one thing I want to go over is the reason I am drawing everything on construction planes as opposed to a bunch of sketches and then just manually moving them up through the body or up through the design is if you draw on your construction planes, it just makes things a lot easier. It's very easy to get confused on which sketch is which, as well as it can cause problems moving sketches, but more so if you add in construction or draw on construction planes, if you just move the construction plane, everything recalculates a lot more easily. But like I said, also depends on how you prefer to work. I built all of my planes and measured them up from the bottom first. If you want, you can work sequentially, do like, the first plane, first sketch, second plane, second sketch, totally up to you, however you like to work. All right. Now, one quick thing though, is the end of this loft bottle, what happens is I can't get a true value for, let me pan up, I can't get a true value for the threading there because that is much more cylindrical than it is tapered. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to roll the history slider back before the shell, and I want to edit my loft feature, and I'm going to just remove the last profile, which is number 7. It's the very top. So that one, I'm going to remove that 7th one and stop at 6. Okay. Now the reason for this is the very top is much more cylindrical. So I'm still going to use that final sketch, which is that circle. And let me double check. I can't remember what it is. Size, that is 26 millimeters in diameter. Great. Okay. So I can either use the sketch, or I can either draw a new sketch on the top here, but since the sketch is already there, I'm going to use the extrude tool, and I'm just going to drag that extrude tool down, or better yet, I'm going to use the extent to object and then just select that surface so it snaps that all the way down. And I'll leave the operation at join. Great. So now the bottle is a little more accurate. And for that little rounded lip there, that's where I could add like a fillet or something like that. But I'm going to wait. Let me see what happens now. Go back to current. Now, tricky thing is now my shell tool, and I'll open up the section analysis here. Now it has shelled all the way inside because I kind of jammed another tool or another feature before that shell. So I just need to edit that feature. Shell, instead of from there, let me cancel that. Select from the top, same deal. Now it has just opened it all up from the top. So just recalculating, no big deal. Okay, hide the section analysis. Next up, I want to use and add threads. Now, the threading here is really easy with Fusion. Use the create drop down, select down, in its own little section here, thread. Yes, you can generate threads depending on what you actually want, but the default setting is to automatically generate depending on your selection. So I'm going to select now this cylindrical extension, this is cylindrical extrusion, and it will automatically generate some threads on there. Now, are those actually the threads that are on here? No, you're right. I could try to get this a little more accurate. But because of the size and everything, a lot of this isn't going to completely match up. Now, the other thing is it is clearly generating threads, but they're not really fully modeled. This is done just to help on saving some computing power on your computer here. So if you want, you can just select, and I do recommend doing this, select the modeled checkbox here, and now it will actually show the threads in full model there. Now, again, that is not at all the correct threads. I can change this up. You've got a whole slew of options, and unless you're familiar with threading, I wouldn't really mess with this. It's perfectly fine to just use the default ones, but just to show you some different ones, let's see here. Where did I just see pipe threads? We'll go pipe thread. It might just completely scramble everything. Yeah. Acme is square. So I would just say, let it stay as the standard profile threads. There's no reason to get into accuracy right now, because we don't need to actually discuss default threading. So just leave it at that. Click OK. Great. Now I have a bottle that is hollow with a wall thickness, and it has threads on top. Not too shabby. This is a good point to go ahead and save to. Next up, I need to create the cap. So I'm going to start a new component. Blah, 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 name, bottle cap. The first object hollows out, there we are, ghosts out, there we go. Now I could start this from a sketch and all that such, but the bottle cap is really just a cylinder. So I'm gonna, instead of using a sketch, I'm just gonna go up to the create section and just create a cylinder. All right. And instead of selecting a profile to work from, I'm gonna zoom in on the top of the bottle, and I'm going to make sure that final sketch is active. It still is, it's viewable. And I'm just gonna select that sketch plane. Now I can build on top of that. And just so you can see what I'm doing a little bit more easily, let me hide the bottle itself. And I'm going to draw out. Now, the actual inside is going to be that 26.77, yada, yada, yada. I need this to be larger, so I can use my calipers and check. It's actually 30 millimeters, so great. Circle goes out to 30. And then how tall is this actually? That is about 15, but make sure it is 15 in the correct direction, or actually it doesn't matter. 15, there we go, goes up. Excellent. All right. So now I unhide the bottle. Now the cap is floating up above, but that's not really a problem at the moment. All right. Next thing, I'm going to use the same shell tool. And instead of using an extrude and cut up through the bottle, I can use this shell tool. It's much easier. Now my shell, I can use I can drag to the thickness. So if it's 30, the original opening is 26. So that means a wall thickness of 2 millimeters, because two on one side, 2 on the other, 4. So small bit of math, I know, eek. But there we go. So the original size is 26 millimeters internal. Click OK. There we go. Just use the shell tool. Sometimes it's just a lot easier to do it that way. And just so you know, looking at it from the front, that shell, it kept a wall thickness all the way through, or rather, to use the section analysis, it's not just the walls, it's the entire inside. So that's the other reason why sometimes it's easier to use the shell tool. All right. And just so it's a little bit easier to see what I'm doing, now I'm going to apply the threads to the inside of the cap. So go to create, go down thread, and like I said, I'm just using the section analysis just so you can see what's going on a little more easily. Make sure you're selecting the inside surface. There we are. Modeled threads automatically generates threads on the inside. I checked the modeled checkbox so you can actually see them. Click OK. There we are. Now I unhide the bottle. Now, are these going to mesh correctly? No, and that's okay. We don't need to actually show them as as actually meshing threads, but just so you can see that they are in fact of the same. Cool. So just to make sure I don't accidentally spill my bottle and showing where we are at this point. Great. Close the cap. Great. Now, how do I get that cap down where it needs to go? This is where we're going to add the joint tool. Next tool is joint here. So on Assemble, it is one of the other two default tools that you would use next to new component. Using joint, you can snap objects in place. As I hover over again, you can snap objects in place relative to one another within your profile, within your project folder. Project file. Now, the default setting is and I'll show on the toolbox that pops up. Default is rigid. Rigid just locks these two things in place like they're glued together. We'll just use that for now, just to show you how this works. When the joint toolbox opens up first, you have component 1 and component 2. Your first selection is what is going to move and from where. Your component 2 selection is to where it's going to go. So let me unhide let me close the analysis tool. And what I actually want is the inside of the bottle cap. So you see when I mouse over, I have my selection snap here, all this such going. When I mouse over the object, my gimbal changes. Now I have this little thing that has the 3 colors of my of the orbit tool, and I'm mousing over the inside surface of this cap. And as I mouse around, you can see there's that little plus sign in there. Great, that's what I want. Snap to right there, and you see as I get close, my little selection snaps close to it. Great, select there. Now that object ghosted out. Unhide the bottle, hide the bottle cap, just because I built these close together. Now as I mouse over here, you can see a similar thing pop up, and my mouse wants to snap over. If you are having difficulty grabbing that point, say it's accidentally wanting to grab something below or something, what you can do is if you mouse over the lip, and let me hide that sketch there. If you mouse over the lip of the bottle, so if you're trying to grab a point that's in the middle of space, and right now it's assuming the inside of that cylinder, which is perfect, that's what I do want. But if you're having difficulty grabbing that, if you mouse over just the top lip of whatever you're doing, press and hold Control, and it locks your selection to that whole plane. So now it won't accidentally try to snap below or anything, and it goes right to where I want. There we go. Now let me unhide the bottle, and it just snapped it in place. Remember, the bottle was up higher, now it's down here. Great. Now motion, I'm going to select over here, the next tab over. Like I said, the first one, rigid, and it's going to jiggle the whole thing as I animate. That's just showing that the two are locked together, like they've been glued together. Next option is revolute. It revolves. You can kind of see the threads rotating inside. It's kind of creepy. Next one is slider. So it slides up and down. Next one is cylindrical. It's a combination of both of those, and that's what I want. I want it to rotate and slide up and down. Now, is it moving way more than I want? Yes, but that's okay. Just to show you the other examples, pin slot is really convenient for making something that moves along in a path. You know about paths. Planer moves around all around on that same plane. Like if you're moving around like a air hockey puck or something. And then ball is if you were making something with a ball socket. But we're doing a cylindrical tool. So great. Click OK. Now I have another one. Now I have another selection pop up on my hierarchy tool. All right. Expand joints. I have cylinder. That little arrow that pops up, edit ball joint limits. This is where I can now mess with. So because it's a multi-move tool, meaning it moves as a cylinder, it rotates and slides, you have two options here for motion, rotate and slide. For rotate, we'll just leave it as is. No reason to change that. Now I pop over the slide command. Now it's going all over the place. Okay, so I do need to set this, and please stop because this is getting confusing. All right. So I need to check these minimum and maximum boxes, and now you'll see these little flags pop up. This allows you to set your minimum and maximum. So if I want to use the slider and move this up, one arrow sets the minimum, which is the one that I accidentally grabbed. So I'm going to put this back to 0. The other one, and you can see the flag now floating up top here, is where it moves to. So I don't know, let's say like 25. Great. So now when I hit animate, it's going to move back and forth from 0 up to there. Cool. Select OK. Now that plot that in place. All right. Let me activate the whole project. And now here we are. Hit save just because, and for your own reference later. All right. Now animations for joints are built into the project now. Ideally, I should be able to grab this cap and move it. Problem is going to be these are now joined together, not necessarily as a like combined join project, but they are linked via a joint. So if I grab one and try to move it, oops, I just want to grab the thing, it's going to move the whole thing around. Now when I let go, you'll see this new option pop up over on the right. It's a position tool or position capture tool. If I move this into place where I wanted it to be, I can select capture position. I want it to go back to where it was. Revert back. All right. Now to fix that, I need to what's called ground one of these objects, and I'm going to ground the bottle. So when I select, or when I go down to the component, I'm going to right click on that, and you'll see in the expanded bar, the second one down is called ground. Now you'll see it adds a little pin down in the hierarchy tree, and on the component component hierarchy tree, there is a pin symbol as well. This bottle now cannot move unless I unlock that. So now when I click and drag the bottle cap, now it slides around and it revolves and all that kind of fun. So it's neat. Again, revert back or Control Z. There we go. All right, that's pretty much the bottle. Now I could go in, I do want to go in, at some point, sure, on my bottle itself. Let me hide on the cap. And let me change my view here to visual style, to visible edges only, because seeing all those threads inside is really getting visually confusing. Okay. Now I do want to show you how to add some features to this. Like this has all these little ridges onto here. Easy way to do that is with the pattern tool. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to create a sketch on the top of the cap, and I'm going to rotate to the top. And I'm going to use a circle tool right at the edge of my cap. And those are really tiny. So let's just say like 1 millimeter. Great. Now I'm going to finish the sketch, and I'm going to use the extrude tool for that whole little circle. And I'm going to have that go most of the way down. So I'm going to drag that down to, sure, 13. That seems about right. Now what I want is, instead of cut, I want that to join. So that's a little ridge there. Click OK. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the circle pattern tool. Drop down, pattern, circle. Make sure I'm selecting the type of faces. And I just want that little feature. And let's make sure I grab the bottom of it as well. There we go. And I'm going to rotate that around the bottle, or the bottle cap rather. Axis. Got to go back down and find the Z axis and the origin. What's going on here? Difficulty selecting it. There we go. All right, go back up to the bottle cap. And now you see I can use the slider to start adding a whole bunch of these, or better yet, just start punching them in Let's see, 25. Let's try 45. That's close. Yeah, that's about right. Click OK. And this also has a little fillet on top. So let me grab the fillet tool. And the problem here is if I add the fillet tool here, I can't grab on top of all this. So I'm going to hit cancel. I'm going to move the history slider back before I did both of those features. Now I'm going to add the fillet tool here to that edge. And I don't know, what is that, 2? That's a bit much. Probably more like 1.5. Hit OK. Now move the history slider back to current. See if I get an error out. Yeah, because I joined that there. Okay, well, that'll be a problem that I can solve with a different way. So I'm going to delete that feature. Because I got this weird bottle cap thing going, now what I can do is go to front. So a different way I can use those same kind of tools to get around this. I can create a sketch. I got to zoom all the way out to get to the origin, but yep, I want it on the front plane here. And what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to create a circle edge based onto here. I'll show you what I mean here. Let's see here. Let's use a 2-point circle. And I do need to actually see what's going on inside. So I'm going to change my visual style to shaded with hidden edges. Now, is this a way more complex method for doing this? Yeah, totally. But I'm having to deal with the workaround here. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm just trying to recreate basically what would have been that fillet here. So that circle you see is inside there. Hit OK. Let's see if this works. Maybe try the revolve tool. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Profile, I want, hard to see. I want that. And axis is again Z. Not sure if this will actually work. There we go. So you see it's creating this weird section here. So instead, let me try the intersect. No, that's not at all what I want. New body. Nah. I think I might just have to live with that, and I'll have to edit that in a different way. The other way that I could have done with this isn't working at all. I was hoping I was going to be able to cut this away. So I'm just going to cancel this, and I'll delete that sketch. Edit sketch, delete it. I think what I'll be able to do instead is go back to the actual original extrusion, edit that feature, and instead of start plane, instead of starting that at the very top, I can offset that by, let's say, 2 millimeters. Oops. -2 millimeters. There we go. Let's let that start a little bit further down. And I got to change the overall original length. What's going on here? Just need the distance to start down there. Oh, it looks like I actually needed to -1 millimeter. That's closer. Okay. And we'll do -10. Okay, so all I did for that is to see I used the offset here to start the extrusion a little bit further away from the actual sketch. Okay, that ought to work. Join, redoes. Great. There we go. Much easier solution. And fill it now for that corner. 1. Sure. Okay. There we go. Much better solution for that cap. All right. Unhide all the stuff. Reactivate the whole project. There we go. And again, let me change my visual style back to visible edges only so you can actually see what's going on. A lot closer. Now this is sitting up a little bit high just because the model itself needs to be moved down a little bit. But that's all right. Okay, we've got a bottle. It's got a cap that is joined by a joint that both have threads inside and out. The last step is making a little handle here. All right. So for this handle, this is where you can use the Loft tool or pipe or whatever makes sense along a path. So what I'm going to use is, as I discussed in the other video, describing the difference between using a sweep, or rather a pipe, which creates a body along a path that you drew, just a line or whatever, and a sweep, which uses your own profile for a sketch that goes along a path. Or I can use Loft, and rather than lofting between individual profiles, I can assign a path. Let's simplify things here. I'm going to create a sketch. I'm just going to use a pipe tool. So I just selected the XZ plane, so I'm working just like flat in front of me. And I want to create a circle along this path, or along the edge of this bottle. Well, the problem is I might not be able to see what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to use the project tool to pull a line off of the edge of this bottle. So I'm going to press P for project. And I'm just going to select, and I moved my selection filter to bodies, the body of the bottle. All right, projection length, fine, hit OK, great. Now, when I go to hide this bottle, you can see these purple lines. It has pulled that profile edge of the bottle there. Great, that's all I need. Now, one thing I did do that, I added that sketch, and I should have done so on the bottle itself. So I'm going to move down, activate the sketch, activate the component of the bottle, and let's see here, because I think my sketch, yeah. Oh, should be all right. Oh, no sketch. Okay, so that was my mistake. I should have activated the bottle because I want it on this component. So I'm going to redo that. Select sketch, same on the profile. Great. Hit P for project. Select the bottle. Hit OK. Now when I hide that body, same. It's on there. Great. So now what I'm going to do is my handle is just kind of a circle. It's not exactly, but it's pretty close. So I'm going to use a center point circle, and I'm just going to select about where that should be on the bottle. And that circle itself is roughly 25 millimeters. Now, what I actually want to do is measure something like inside of that handle, which is more like 16. Cool. We'll just kind of round out those values. Right there. So it's about 16. That's rather small. That's okay. All right. Now I'm going to, let's see here. Yeah, that should be about right. All right. We'll hit finish sketch. And let me unhide the body here. Now I'm going to use the create tool. Go down, pipe. My path selects that circle. That is way too large. How large is this little glass handle? It is about 7 millimeters thick. So selection size 7. Whoop. And there we go. Excuse me. New component. I do not want new component. What I want is it to join. So select operation join, and that now links that on there. Oops, I left my selection filter a square. Let's make that circle. That makes a lot more sense. Okay, so that's going to join all together. Great. Hit OK. Now, one quick thing though, I left that circle as a complete circle. So now when I use the section analysis, you can see that's all internal. Oh, also I made the bottle, that handle hollow. Didn't need to do that. So what that means is, for one, I'm going to go back, edit this feature, and uncheck that hollow. Don't need that. Okay. But I'm going to go back and adjust that sketch too. So I'm going to click select sketch. And let me hide the body here so it cleans it up a little bit. I can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to trim that part of the sketch. Hit OK. Now this is probably going to cause issue. Yep, that's okay. Because what happened is now it just messed with the pipe tool because that now no longer exists. So just go back, edit feature again. And now I'm just selecting, I'll deselect and reselect just that half circle there. No need to change the values. Join, circular, we're good. What's going on here? It's messing with something and it's not letting me complete the circle. Oh, distance, for some reason it was set at 0. 1. There we go. Change the 0 from a 1, or the 0 to a 1. Okie doke. And that's pretty much it. So let me hide the section analysis. Zoom out. Reactivate the whole project. There we go. All right. And it's just showing me a bunch of components within that bottle cap because it has these sketches active. That's all. Okie doke. So now there's a little handle on here. The bottle cap, the bottle cap itself can move up and down and rotate. It's fully threaded. Revert position, I don't want it to save that. And you can see with the section analysis tool, it is a full bottle there. There we are. Last thing you want to do is, you can play around with the appearance tool. So I just use Shift in to switch back to the appearance view. Press A to bring up the appearance toolbox. Sometimes it takes a moment. There we are. And yeah, play around with different stuff. Smooth glass, sure. We'll say it's a clear glass thing. Click and drag it over to the body. Bloop, changes that. And then the other one, tell you what, let's make it a gold cap because it's delicious syrup, I assume. And drop that onto the other body. Hooray. Now it's a gold capped glass bottle, syrup bottle. Now, as I said, on the actual bottle, there's this little ridge here. This is where you'd want to go in and add additional features and such. And that's okay. You can always make additional features afterwards. But that's the basic project. There's a lot to go over. So take your time. Change back over. So take your time, and we're going to address this as we go along. You'll have plenty of time. Save the project finally. And there we are. All right. So good luck with it. Have fun, play around. Just remember that Loft uses a sequential set of patterns. You don't want to just select them willy-nilly, and you want to make sure they're spread apart properly. So just take care of that. Make sure your measurements are about as close as you can get them. And then if there are errors, we'll talk about them. So good luck, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.